Hello. In this video I want to deal with keyframing, or called more correctly keyframe animation. Simply put, as far as Title Pro 7 is concerned, keyframe animation enables specific parameters of a title to be changed over a period of time. You don't necessarily have to get involved with keyframing. Title Pro 7's library is packed full with templates that include animations of some kind. However, if you've ever wanted to introduce your own animations into titles, keep watching and I'll show you how. It's not as difficult as you may think. Whether you use Title Pro 7 standalone or launch it from your NLE, the procedures are the same. I'm using the standalone version as I only need to use one title. Before proceeding, I have to tell you that none of the attributes in the Style section can be animated. For instance, it's not possible to make a title element change colour over time. I'll make a start by deleting my default element. And we'll start with a very simple example of animation. I will add a rectangle and move this to the left of the screen, and I will bring the playhead back to the start of the timeline. We'll now go to the Global tab and turn on keyframing. You'll notice that a keyframe has been entered in the keyframe list, and a keyframe has been placed on the timeline at the beginning of the element. Okay, what's a keyframe? A keyframe on a title element is simply a marker placed at a frame boundary, specifying that at that frame boundary all the parameters for that element are fixed. If that seems a little long-winded, things will become clearer as we go through this tutorial. I'm going to move the playhead to the end of the timeline. Just bring it back one frame. We'll then move the square element across to the other side of the screen. You'll notice that when I do that, an extra keyframe is placed in the keyframe list and one is placed on the element where the playhead is. I'll now return the playhead to the beginning of the timeline. You can do it by dragging it across or just clicking on the keyframe 1 symbol. I'm now going to play the title to see what happens. Now you will see that the position of the pause point has an effect on the animation. As I've mentioned in some of my tutorials, with regard to transitions and effects, it's important to be aware of the relationship between the timeline length, the title length, and the position of the pause point. To ensure that the pause point doesn't affect your keyframe animations, make sure that the timeline length is equal to the title length. In this instance, the title length is 10 seconds. That happens to be the default title length. And the timeline length is 3 seconds. This is my default timeline length. So I'm now just going to change that 3 to 10. That will extend the timeline. I'll just open that up. Now, because the timeline length is equal to the title length, the pause point won't have any effect. So if I now play it, we'll bring the playhead back to the beginning and play it. Now you see what's happening there. This is a little bit of a problem with Title Pro. When things are changed and the element doesn't get re-rendered. So to cure that, what I'm just going to do is bring the playhead back to the beginning, and I'm just going to change one of the parameters, in this case the X parameter. And now you can see that the animation is playing correctly. By changing that parameter there, I've forced a re-render of the element, which made it play correctly. Now the speed at which the square moves across the screen is dependent upon the distance between the two keyframes. If I want the square to move quickly or quicker, I can just grab that keyframe and drag it to the middle of the timeline. Wait till it renders. Bring the playhead back to the beginning and play it. And that shows it going across the screen quicker. Conversely, if I wanted to make it travel across the screen more slowly, I would bring the keyframe further away from the first keyframe. So as you can see, that's travelling slower. At this point, I'd just like to mention this checkbox here, smooth interpolation. If I select that, bring the playhead back and then play, you'll see that there's a very gradual acceleration and deceleration. So it just adds a bit of fluidity to the transition. I'll just take that off for now. Now in this example, the only parameter that's animated is the x-coordinate of the square. If I drag the playhead, you will see the x-coordinate move. Let's now introduce some more animation. I'm going to move the playhead to the second keyframe. I'm now going to select the rotate icon on the element and turn the element a full 360 degrees. Now to return the playhead to the beginning of the timeline and play the title. Now I'm going to move the playhead to the middle of the timeline. And move the square to the top of the screen. You'll notice how another keyframe has been generated on the element and also in the keyframe list. I now return the playhead to the beginning of the timeline and play the title. To add a little bit extra, go to the last keyframe and then to the scale parameters. Click the padlock icon because we want the scale to be uniform, and drag the scale sliders out. Return the playhead to the beginning of the timeline and play the title. You'll notice that the size of the square remains constant until it reaches the second keyframe, and then it increases in size until it reaches the third keyframe. I will now move the playhead back to the beginning of the timeline. No, I'll move the playhead to the keyframe, second keyframe, because I want to delete this keyframe. If I click the minus sign here, the keyframe will be deleted. Wait till the title renders. Go to the first keyframe and play the title. You will see now that the square increases in size from the start to the finish. I'll now return the playhead to the last keyframe and change the opacity to 0. Wait for it to render. Go back to the beginning of the timeline and play the title. This time you'll see, as well as it getting bigger, it goes down to 0 opacity. I'll now move the playhead again to the middle and change the opacity to 0. This will create another keyframe in the middle and in the keyframe list. Go to keyframe 3 and change the opacity to 100%. Wait till it renders. Go back to the beginning of the timeline and play the title. Now then, you can see that there's obviously something wrong. That should have gone down to 0 and come back to 100%. This is a further known problem. This will happen if the opacity at the middle keyframe is less than 4.6. If I move this to 4.6, wait till it renders, go back to keyframe 1, play the title. As you can see, it goes to nearly 0 and then comes back to 100. If I go to the second keyframe again and just reduce that to 4.4, you'll see that the problem arises again. So if you need to do this kind of animation where the opacity goes from 100% to 0 and then 100%, make sure that the 0 isn't actually 0. Make sure it's greater than 4.6 or equal to 4.6. I think we'd better finish there. I had hoped that this would have been a short introduction to keyframing, but it's turned out to be a little longer than I anticipated. I hope to return to keyframe animation sometime in the future when I'll look at ways of animating your own lower third designs. Until the next tutorial, bye for now, and thanks for watching.